Here it is, Aaron. I told you I'd get to it. Yo guys, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and if you have any opinions at all you'd like to share, put them down in the comment section. Marianas Trench. Fix me. Marianas Trench, previously punk rock, currently pop electronic band. A lot of people know this band from their pop rock, huge radio hits, especially here in Canada, such as Cross My Heart, Desperate Measures, Fallout, Celebrity Status, and pretty much countless others. Not too many people I know who know this band have actually ended up hearing this album or any songs from it, since it really wasn't that big of a hit. And frankly, neither have I until this review. This being their 2006 debut album, Fix Me. The band was pretty obscure at this point in their career, despite being around for about 5 years, even though they only really released one EP in that entire time frame. So, in theory, this album could really put their name out there. So, in comparison to their later albums, how does this one stand up? Let's find out as I review it track by track. We'll start off with the singles, with there being 3 of them, the first one being the opener, Say Anything, which really comes out of the gate swinging with this very vintage, almost nostalgic early mid-2000s pop-punk riff that sounds very overwhelming. Thankfully, that doesn't stay for a bit, but instead, we get some lovely bass and drum work on the verses, and Josh explodes vocally before the chorus comes roaring in. This is truly a fantastic way to open up a debut album. The path of greatness is definitely being paved with this song. Lyrically, it seems to be about a relationship on the surface, but deeper down, it's actually about his depression, almost like therapy, hiding the deeper emotions where no one can see them. Wonderful song, worth a listen. The second single, Decided to Break It, was the only song I have ever heard from this album prior to this review, and I definitely understand why this was a single. This is probably the closest the band gets on this album to their signature sound, especially that irresistible chorus. The band can always write a catchy hook. The verses contain more of the punk rock style, just toned down quite a bit, and Josh's vocals are definitely not the best on the album here, but his melodies are just as good as they've always been. And they also complement this instrumental pretty well. And lyrically, it seems to be about a relationship and how dysfunctional it is, with lies, alcoholism, and apathy. This is a great song, I really enjoy it. And the third and final single, Shake Tramp, is definitely an early predecessor of some of the more fun tracks that would go on to define their next album, yet still has that punky attitude that makes this debut album. Josh's vocals really have that same sassiness that they've always had, especially as he sings this line in the chorus, and I'm not gonna say this, you can just read it for yourself. Also, I usually don't care for na-na-nas, and this one's no exception, but I can almost look past that with Josh's great vocals. Lyrically though, it's actually a little bit tougher, basically about how bands and artists are messed up and mistreated by the music industry. Awesome song, certainly one of my favorites here. Now for the rest of the tracks. September opens up with this really catchy, very traditional punk rock rhythm with Ian on that snare drum. The background vocals feel just a little bit off for a track like this, and while Josh may not give the most heartfelt or powerful vocal performance, his tone is plenty enough to hear his pain and sorrow, and in all honesty, this could have easily been the ballad of this album. Also, that breakdown right near the end of the track, where it goes into almost a metal-style heaviness, feels like all the bottled-up emotions are just exploding. And lyrically, it's very gut-wrenching, about knowing you're in this cycle of pain and can't get out of it. Tough listen, still a good song. Alibis is this absolutely crushing slow burn, like is September was actually a ballad. And yeah, this one really hurts to listen to. That guitar work just feels so depressing and dour, and the drumming adds a little bit of tension to it all as well. Josh's vocals, though, they easily sell the show, sounding traumatized, pained, honestly depressed. It's definitely a tearjerker on this album, certainly in an unexpected place as well, only track 4. And considering this comes right before Shake Tramp, this album is definitely a roller coaster. Lyrically though, it's still tough, about Josh's struggle with bulimia, depression, and drug addiction, and how he's half the man he wanted to be. Not for the faint of heart at all. Low opens up with this very loud, punky, gritty guitar riff, and the drums pack a real amount of heft to them. Then, as soon as Josh comes in, the guitar completely cuts out for the bass riff to shine, and that drum work to be absolutely worth its weight. Speaking of Josh, his vocal delivery is crushing yet again. Maybe less so on the verses, but they are still good. But damn, that chorus is incredible. Josh hollers like he's let out his deepest and darkest demons. It's such an entrancing listen that also really tugs at your heartstrings at the same time. Lyrically, it's about thinking that you let people down when you're in a depressed state. Beautifully tragic listen. Push definitely has a bit more of that modern pop rock Marianas Trench style we all know and love from the late 2000s, early 2010s. It's got that lighter guitar, lighter drum work, definitely straying further away from the punk style. The chorus is just as catchy as anything the band has done. I'm telling you, this band and their hook writing game is completely unparalleled. And while Josh's vocals might not be the most powerful, for this instrumental it's very fitting and enjoyable despite the background vocals. But lyrically, it's actually a song about heroin addiction, using the metaphor of pushing up against a wall, breathing in and out, not feeling at all to describe that. This one's also not a bad song at all. Far From Here, on the other hand, is probably the most hardcore, gritty, and metal performance in the band's entire discography, instrumentally that is. That riff in particular really sells this song, and Ian's drum work is also pretty well up to par. Josh's vocals, on the other hand, for the first half of the track they're pretty standard, falsetto-y, until the 2/3 mark where he lets out this throaty growl that just reinvigorates the song for the final chorus. It's such a satisfying end for this song, and lyrically it's about lying, saying everything's alright but deep down you know it isn't true, and in the end masking the larger problem. Again, not a bad song. Vertigo is the track that I've heard a lot of people call the worst on this album, and to an extent I can kinda see why. It doesn't really feel like it has the same impact to an extent, and the verses feel a bit disjointed, but come on, that chorus is one of the best on this entire album. It's so catchy, and that instrumental is just as hard-rocking as anything else here. Though lyrically, it's yet again another tough track, basically about self-harming and how Josh struggles with it, trying to figure out why he even continues in the first place. Maybe not the toughest listen, but a good song. Alive Again features this almost techno-inspired synth melody, and out of all the tracks in this album, this one is definitely the one most reminiscent of some of their later work, especially the stuff on Phantoms. The verses are very minimalistic with that synth riff and light percussion, but then the punky attitude returns with a vengeance on the chorus, and Josh's vocals are probably the most lackluster on this entire album. Lyrically, it's about how dealing with the pain and hiding it is just so much easier than faking happiness. Out of all the tracks on this album, though, in all honesty, this would probably be the one that's my least favorite. And finally, the closer, Skin and Bones, opens up with this very soft, calming guitar riff, trying to be all passionate for the closer. But then that chorus hits with that much weight. It feels like I'm a part of this therapy session, or Josh just talking about his problems. And while Josh's vocals aren't the most passionate on the album, god damn it, they still hurt. And lyrically, wow. This may just be one of the toughest on this album about his struggle with bulimia and his constant desire to lose weight to eventually become Skin and Bones. This is yet another very harsh listen, again, not for the faint of heart. Overall, consider me really impressed. For a debut album, this is definitely something special, and certainly worth a listen if you know the band's more poppy stuff. In a time of rather fantastic rock releases coming from 2006, such as My Chemical Romance, Taking Back Sunday, and Rise Against, this is absolutely a gem that is worth checking out that a lot of people have missed. I'm feeling a pretty solid 9 out of 10 on this album. Well guys, hope you enjoyed that review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.